I'm Mildred Bailey, 55 years old, and I never imagined I'd be sitting in an Augusta courtroom, clutching an envelope that could unravel 10 years of buried lies. My sister stood across from me, her lawyer planted beside her, accusing me of kidnapping her 4 children. Kidnapping? The word struck like a slap. 10 years ago, she left those kids on my doorstep, swearing she'd be back in an hour, and then disappeared. I raised them, fed them, clothed them, loved them as if they were my own. And now she'd returned, not for them, but for something far more selfish. Greed glimmered in her eyes, and I knew exactly why. A house, our family's home worth $300,000, was on the line. She thought she could waltz in, point a finger, and take everything. But I wasn't going down without a fight. My hands trembled as I held the envelope stuffed with proof that would flip her story upside down. The kids, now teenagers, sat behind me, their faces tight but loyal. I had shielded them from her betrayal for years, but today the truth was coming out. The judge leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Do they know about this?" he asked, nodding toward the envelope. I drew in a breath, my heart hammering. "Not yet," I said, my voice steady despite the storm churning inside me. The courtroom fell silent, every eye fixed on me. What was in that envelope? What had my sister hidden all these years? Stay with me, because this fight is just beginning. What would you do if your own family turned on you and accused you after everything you'd sacrificed? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story. 10 years ago, on a rainy afternoon in Augusta, my doorbell rang like a cry for help. I opened the door and found my sister, Janet Porter, standing there, her face pale and her eyes darting. Behind her were her 4 kids, Ryan Porter, 8 years old, with his backpack sagging, Claire Porter, 6, clutching a stuffed bunny, Esther Porter, 4, her shoes untied, and little Noah Porter, barely 2, whimpering in a stroller. "Mildred, I need you to watch them for an hour," Janet said, her voice sharp and desperate. "Just 1 hour, I swear." Before I could ask anything, she shoved a diaper bag into my arms and turned away, her coat flapping as she hurried to her car. The engine roared, and she was gone. I stood frozen on the porch, rain dripping steadily from the roof. Ryan looked up at me, confusion in his tired eyes. "Where's Mom going?" he whispered. Claire's bunny was damp, her hair tangled from the drizzle. Esther tugged at my sleeve asking for juice, while Noah's cries grew louder, his tiny fists clenched. They were hungry, their clothes rumpled, and Noah's diaper needed changing. My heart raced. I was a nurse, used to emergencies, but this felt different. These were my sister's children, dropped off like baggage. I brought them inside and settled them on the living room rug. The house still smelled of the coffee I just brewed, but suddenly it felt too small for 4 frightened kids. I dug through the diaper bag and found only a few snacks and a spare outfit for Noah. No note, no instructions, just chaos. I gave Esther a granola bar, poured milk for Claire, and tried soothing Noah, rocking him gently. Ryan sat quietly, staring at the door, waiting for Janet to return. I grabbed my phone and called her. No answer. I tried again. Voicemail. "Janet, where are you?" I said, steadying my voice for the kids. "Call me back." Hours crept by, and the rain didn't ease. Noah fell asleep in my arms, his cheeks streaked with tears. Claire curled beside Ryan, whispering, "Is Mom coming soon?" I forced a smile. "She'll be here, sweetheart." But my stomach twisted. Janet had always been impulsive, chasing dreams that never worked out. But this, abandoning her children, was something I couldn't comprehend. By evening, I fed them what I had, peanut butter sandwiches and apples. Ryan helped Esther with her sandwich, acting far older than his 8 years. I changed Noah's diaper, wincing at how long he'd been in it. Their clothes were mismatched, thrown together in a hurry. I kept calling Janet, leaving messages until her voicemail was full. At midnight, I tucked the kids into my guest bed, Ryan and Claire on one side, Esther and Noah curled up together. I sat by the window, watching the empty street, waiting for headlights that never appeared. The next morning, I found a crumpled note in the diaper bag beneath a pack of wipes. In Janet's messy scrawl, it read, "I'll be back soon. Thanks, Mildred."
Soon.
My chest tightened. I looked at the kids eating cereal at my kitchen table. Ryan's eyes kept drifting to the door. Claire held her bunny tighter. Esther rambled about a cartoon, blissfully unaware. Noah reached for me, his small hand warm and trusting. I wasn't their mother, but they needed me. I set the note down, my hands shaking. Janet wasn't coming back. Not today. Maybe not ever. I took a deep breath, thinking about my job at the hospital, my quiet life in Augusta. I had never planned for this, but those kids weren't luggage to be abandoned. I called my friend Betty for advice. "Mildred, you've got a big heart," she said. "Do what you do best. Take care of them." I nodded even though she couldn't see it. I hung up and looked at Ryan, Claire, Esther, and Noah. They were scared, hungry, and alone. I couldn't undo Janet's choices, but I could be there for her children. So I decided they would stay with me, no matter what it cost. Days slipped into weeks, and I realized her soon had been a lie. The kids settled into my routine, but I had to rebuild everything. I was 45 then, a nurse at Augusta General Hospital, dreaming of early retirement and maybe a little travel. That dream vanished quickly. To cover the expenses, I picked up night shifts, coming home drained but determined. Ryan started asking for breakfast every morning. Claire wanted bedtime stories. Esther needed playtime, and Noah was always reaching for me. I could never say no. First on the list was getting them into school. Ryan and Claire were old enough for the local elementary, so I drove to the district office with their birth certificates from Janet's bag. The clerk raised an eyebrow when I explained I was their aunt, but with no other guardian listed, they approved the enrollment. On Ryan's first day, he clung to my hand, whispering that he missed his old school. I knelt down and said, "This is our new start, Ryan. You'll make friends." Claire skipped ahead, excited for art class. I watched them go, my shift starting in 2 hours. Esther was still too young for preschool, so I found a sitter through the hospital network. Noah stayed with me on my days off. Buying school supplies drained my savings, backpacks, notebooks, crayons, but seeing their faces light up made it worth it. Clothes came next. The outfits Janet left were worn and thin, so I took them to the thrift store on Main Street. Ryan chose a blue jacket, Claire a dress with flowers, Esther tiny jeans, and Noah soft onesies. "Do we have money for this?" Ryan asked, his voice unsure. I ruffled his hair. "We do, kiddo. Family sticks together." At home, I washed everything and folded it neatly. Evenings became our time, spaghetti or chicken nuggets for dinner, then homework. Ryan struggled with fractions, so I sat beside him, explaining them like I did patients' medication doses. Claire drew pictures of her house. Bills piled up, groceries, utilities, the mortgage on our family home, the last big thing left from Mom and Dad. It was a sturdy brick house on Elm Street worth $300,000, but selling it wasn't an option. That place held memories, and it was stability for the kids. I cut back on everything for myself. No new scrubs, no coffee on the go. Hospital paychecks stretched thin, so I applied for aid through social services. The caseworker visited and noted how well the kids were doing despite everything. "You're doing right by them, Mrs. Bailey," she said. But nights by myself, after tucking them in, I'd stare at the ceiling wondering if Janet would ever return. The kids asked about her often. Ryan, being the oldest, struggled the most. One night over dinner, he asked, "Aunt Mildred, when is Mom coming to pick us up?" I paused, my fork halfway to my mouth. "She's working on some things, Ryan. But I'm here now, and we're a team." He nodded, but his eyes showed he didn't believe me. Claire was sweeter, drawing cards for Janet during holidays. "Can we send this to her?" she'd ask. I'd smile and mail them to the last address I had. Even when they came back, Esther, at 4, was blunt. "Mommy left because I was bad," she cried once after a tantrum. I held her close. "No, Esther, you're perfect. Sometimes grown-ups need time." Noah, too little to understand, called me Mama by accident one day, and it broke my heart. I didn't correct him, I just hugged him tighter. Friends stepped in when they could. Betty Coleman, my old nursing buddy, brought casseroles, and watched the younger ones when I worked doubles. "You're a saint, Mildred," she'd say while folding laundry. I laughed it off, but the weight pressed on me. Doctor visits added up. Ryan's checkups, Claire's shots, Esther's ear infections, Noah's teething pains. Insurance covered some, but co-pays stacked like bricks. I dipped into my savings for winter coats and birthday cakes from the store. Ryan's 8th birthday turned into his 9th without much fanfare, just a few balloons. I blew up myself. He gave me a drawing of all of us together, and it felt like gold. Years blurred together. Ryan started middle school, excelling in science like his father once had. Claire joined the choir, her voice filling the house. Esther began ballet, classes I couldn't afford but somehow managed. Noah learned to walk, then run, chasing his siblings through the halls. I missed shifts for school events and parent-teacher meetings where I was the only adult who showed up. "Where's their mom?" teachers would ask. "Traveling for work," I'd reply, the lie slipping out easier each time. The pain never faded though, a sister who vanished, leaving me to pick up her pieces. But watching the kids grow and laugh kept me going. The house creaked under our feet, a constant reminder of what we had, even if money was tight. One evening, after a grueling shift, I came home to find Ryan helping Esther with homework while Claire read to Noah. "We made dinner, Aunt Mildred," Ryan said proudly. I sat down, tears stinging my eyes. This was my life now, and I wouldn't trade it. But deep down, I wondered how long I could keep the truth buried. Then, after all those years, she returned. A knock at my door brought Janet back. But she wasn't alone. I opened it to see her standing tall in a tailored blazer, her eyes cold and sharp. Beside her stood a man in a crisp suit who introduced himself as Attorney Stephen Hart. "Mrs. Bailey," he said, handing me a legal notice. "We're here about the children." My stomach dropped. Ryan, now 18, sat at the kitchen table doing homework. Claire, 16, was practicing a choir song. Esther, 14, and Noah, 12, were playing cards in the living room. They froze the moment they heard the word children. Janet's voice cut through the house. "I want my kids back, Mildred. You've kept them unlawfully." I stood there gripping the notice, my mind spinning. "Unlawfully," I repeated, my voice unsteady. "Janet, you left them with me for 10 years. She crossed her arms, unfazed. "That's not how I see it. I'm their mother, and I'm taking them." Hart stepped forward, his tone sharp. "We've filed for custody. You'll be hearing from the court soon." The kids gathered behind me, Ryan's jaw tight, Claire's eyes wide. Esther whispered, "Is she taking us?" I squeezed her hand. "No one's taking you, sweetheart." Noah clung to my side, trembling silently. Janet didn't even glance at them. Her cold eyes stayed locked on me like I was the villain. After they left, I sat the kids down. "What's happening?" Ryan asked, his voice steady but worried. I took a deep breath. "Your mom's back, and she's trying to get custody. But we are a family, and I won't let that happen." Claire's lip quivered. "Why now?" "She didn't want us before." I pulled her close, but no answer came. Esther and Noah stayed quiet, their cards forgotten. That night, I couldn't sleep. The legal notice pulsed in my thoughts. Why was Janet doing this? She hadn't called, visited, or sent a single message in 10 years. Then it hit me, the house. Our parents had died 2 years earlier, leaving the home on Elm Street to both of us. A sturdy brick house worth $300,000, the only real asset left. I'd kept it for the kids, a safe place for them to grow. Janet, I realized, wasn't fighting for them. She was fighting for the house. The notice mentioned estate disputes, exposing her motive. She thought custody would give her leverage to force a sale or take my share. My blood boiled. She had abandoned Ryan, Claire, Esther, and Noah, and now she wanted to profit from it. I needed proof. I called Betty Coleman, who'd been with me from the beginning. "Janet's back." "Betty," I said quietly. "She's claiming I stole her kids." Betty snorted. "After she dumped them on you? What's her angle?" I told her about the house. "We have to be ready for court," I said. She promised she'd testify about those early days. I hung up and went digging through old boxes in the attic. In a folder, I found the crumpled note Janet left 10 years ago. I'll be back soon. Thanks, Mildred. I also found old texts, her vague messages about needing space, money being tight. Proof she'd checked out long before. Then I remembered Eric Larson, her ex-husband. He'd reached out once, asking about the kids, but keeping his distance. I found his number and called. Eric, it's Mildred. Janet's trying to take the kids for the house. He sighed, his voice heavy. I'm not surprised. She called me last month asking about property laws. He paused. I have something, a video she sent me years ago, admitting she walked away. My heart jumped. Can you send it? He agreed, and said he'd come if needed. The video, he explained, showed Janet laughing about leaving the kids to live her life. With the note, the texts, and Eric's video, hope flickered. But the pressure was overwhelming. The kids were shaken. Ryan stayed up researching custody laws. Claire stopped singing. Esther sketched angry pictures. Noah asked if he'd be taken away. I told them again. We're staying together. No matter what. I met with a lawyer recommended by the hospital, a kind woman who reviewed everything. You have a strong case, Mrs. Bailey, she said. But court can be unpredictable. Prepare yourself. I nodded, my resolve hardening. Every night, I checked on the kids as they slept, their faces soft under the lamplight. Ryan's college application lay on his desk. Claire's choir ribbons decorated her wall. Esther's ballet shoes hung by the door. Noah's soccer ball rested in the corner. This was their life. Our life, built from the ashes Janet left behind. I wasn't perfect, but I had given them everything I had. Now, facing her in court, I would do whatever it took to protect them. The house wasn't just brick and mortar. It was their safety, their memories. Janet wasn't going to take that away. The courtroom loomed ahead. In the Augusta courthouse, I held my envelope tightly, ready to fight for the truth. The room smelled of polished wood, its benches filled with a few whispering locals. I sat with Ryan, Claire, Esther, and Noah behind me, their faces tense but trusting. My lawyer, Miss Thompson, nodded reassuringly. Across the aisle, Janet sat with Stephen Hart, both looking polished and confident. The bailiff called, "All rise," and Judge Charles Lane, a stern man with gray hair, took his seat. "We're here to address the custody of 4 minors," he said calmly. "Mrs. Porter claims Mrs. Bailey has kept them unlawfully." Hart stood, adjusting his tie. "Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Janet Porter, is the biological mother of Ryan, Claire, Esther, and Noah Porter. For 10 years, Mrs. Bailey has denied her access, holding the children without legal guardianship. We seek immediate custody and a review of estate matters tied to their care." Janet leaned forward, her expression calm but calculated, still avoiding the kids' eyes. I clenched the envelope tighter, my pulse thudding in my ears. Miss Thompson whispered, "Stay calm, Mildred. We've got this." I nodded, though the weight of Janet's accusation felt like a blade pressed to my chest. Hart called Janet to the stand. She rose, smoothing her skirt. "I left my children temporarily, due to personal challenges," she said softly, every word sounding rehearsed. "I always intended to return, but my sister refused to let me see them. I'm their mother, and I want them back." A few gasps rippled from the back row. Judge Lane's face stayed neutral, but his eyes narrowed. "Mrs. Porter, you're saying you were denied access for a decade?" he asked. Janet nodded, a single tear glistening, too perfectly, I thought. Ms. Thompson stood. "Your Honor, may I present evidence?" The judge nodded. I handed her the envelope, my hand steady despite the nerves. She held up the worn note from 10 years ago. "This is a handwritten note from Mrs. Porter left with the children in 2015, Miss Thompson said, reading aloud. "I'll be back soon. Thanks, Mildred." Mrs. Porter never returned. The bailiff carried the note to the judge. Janet's composure slipped. Hart leaned in to whisper to her, his jaw tight. Next, Ms. Thompson displayed text messages pulled from my old phone. "These texts from 2015 to 2016 show Mrs. Porter requesting money from Mrs. Bailey," she said. One read, "Send me $500, Mildred. I'm sorting things out. Another, I need cash, not questions. The courtroom buzzed. These messages, Miss Thompson continued, prove Mrs. Porter abandoned her children and contacted Mrs. Bailey only for financial gain. Janet's face reddened, and she looked away. I met Ryan's eyes. He gave a small nod, confident in the truth. Judge Lane leaned forward. Mrs. Bailey, did you attempt to contact Mrs. Porter? I stood, my voice firm. Yes, Your Honor. I called her repeatedly after she left the kids. Her phone went to voicemail, then was disconnected. I mailed letters to her last address, but they were returned. I raised Ryan, Claire, Esther, and Noah because my sister left them with nothing. His pen scratched across his notepad, the sound echoing in the quiet room. Hart objected. Mrs. Bailey's claims lack proof of intent. Ms. Thompson countered. The note and texts show clear abandonment. Then the judge turned to the kids. I'd like to hear from the children, he said. Ryan, now 18, stood first. His voice was steady. Aunt Mildred's been our mom for 10 years. She worked nights, paid for school, everything. Our real mom left us and never called. Claire, 16, went next, her hands shaking. I don't want to go with her, she said, glancing at Janet. Aunt Mildred is our family. Esther, 14, spoke softly but firmly. She was never there. Aunt Mildred loves us. Noah, 12, squeezed my hand before whispering, I only know Aunt Mildred. She's my home. Silence washed over the courtroom, their words hanging in the air. I fought tears, my hand resting on Noah's shoulder. Janet's face twisted, but she said nothing. Hart leaned toward her again, whispering urgently. A few locals murmured, shaking their heads. Judge Lane looked at the children, then at me. These are compelling statements, he said. But the accusation of unlawful custody is serious. Mrs. Bailey, your evidence shows a pattern, but it isn't conclusive. Mrs. Porter's claim of denied access must be addressed. He paused, tapping his pen. Do you have anything else to substantiate your position, Mrs. Bailey? I froze, my mind racing. The note and text were strong, but Janet's accusations still hung in the air. Ms. Thompson leaned in. We have more, Your Honor, but we need a moment to prepare it. The judge nodded. I'll allow it, but I need something definitive to resolve this. The room felt like it was closing in, the tension thick enough to choke on. Janet smirked slightly, sensing an opening. Ryan grabbed my hand and whispered, You've got this, Aunt Mildred. I nodded, though my heart pounded painfully. We needed something stronger, something undeniable. And then, just when I feared we had nothing left, a familiar figure stepped into the courtroom. Eric Larson, Janet's ex-husband, walked through the doors, his face worn but resolute. He held a small USB drive, his eyes meeting mine before he approached Miss Thompson. The room buzzed with whispers. Janet froze, her fingers digging into the table. Hart leaned to whisper sharply in her ear, but her gaze stayed locked on Eric. Your Honor, Miss Thompson said, rising swiftly, we have a new witness and additional evidence. Judge Lane raised an eyebrow, adjusting his glasses. Proceed, he said, curiosity cutting through his stern tone. Eric took the stand, swearing in with a steady voice. I'm Eric Larson, he began, formerly married to Mrs. Janet Porter. I have a video she sent me years ago that's relevant to this case. The bailiff set up a screen while Miss Thompson inserted the USB. My heart pounded as the video flickered to life. Janet appeared younger, her hair loose, sitting in a dim bar. I'm done with the kids, she said, laughing lightly. 4 kids, too much. I'm starting over with someone new. Someone who gets me. Mildred can deal with them. She sipped a drink and added, I just need money to move on. The video ended, and the courtroom erupted in murmurs. Ryan gripped my hand, his face pale. Claire's eyes widened. Esther whispered, That's Mom. Noah looked down, silent. My throat tightened. I leaned toward Miss Thompson. Do they know about this? I whispered, glancing back at the kids. It was the truth I had shielded them from for 10 long years, the cruelty behind their mother's disappearance. Ms. Thompson shook her head. Not yet, she whispered. But they're hearing it now. My chest clenched. I had tried so hard to protect them from this pain, telling them their mother was sorting things out. Now they were hearing her betrayal in a crowded courtroom. Judge Lane banged his gavel. "Mrs. Porter," he said sharply, "do you have an explanation for this?" Janet stood, her face flushed, her hands trembling. Across the aisle, Janet sagged in her seat, her face drained of color. Hart packed his briefcase with quick, clipped motions, avoiding her eyes entirely. The locals whispered, some nodding with approval, others staring at her with a mix of sympathy and judgment. Judge Lane's ruling hung in the air. The kids were safe with me, and the house on Elm Street was truly ours. Janet's defeat didn't end at the courthouse doors. Word spread quickly in Augusta that she hadn't been after her children. She'd been after the family home, valued at $300,000, hoping to fund her lifestyle. And when she lost, everything unraveled. Hart's steep legal fees piled up. Betty later told me Janet had been living lavishly, renting a condo in Portland, driving a leased car she couldn't maintain. Once the house slipped out of reach, her plans collapsed. She moved into a small apartment, her dreams of easy money gone. I didn't wish her pain, but the truth was, her choices had carved this path long before the courtroom ever did. The victory felt heavy. I'd won, but at a cost. Janet was my sister once, my confidant, my partner in childhood mischief. We'd shared secrets, whispered into pillows, laughed until dawn. Now she was a stranger, the distance between us carved deep by betrayal. As we walked out of the courthouse, I glanced back. Janet stood alone, shoulders bowed, staring at the floor. I wanted to feel anger, but all I felt was sorrow for the sister I'd lost, for the family we might have been. Then I turned away, guiding the kids through the double doors and into the crisp Maine air. At home, the house felt warmer, like it finally exhaled after holding its breath for years. Ryan sat at the kitchen table, his college application spread out. "You fought for us, Aunt Mildred," he said, his voice steady. "You're our real mom." My throat tightened. Claire hugged me, her choir ribbon catching the light. "I was scared we'd lose you," she whispered. Esther chimed in, her spark returning. "You're stuck with us," she teased, grinning. Noah wrapped his arms around my waist. "I love you, Mom," he murmured. He'd called me that before, but this time it felt different, final, rooted, real. I held them all close, tears blurring the room, their warmth grounding me. That night we ate pizza on the living room floor, the old brick house creaking around us like it was settling into peace. The kids laughed, Ryan talking about his science project, Claire humming a new song. Esther talked about ballet. Noah chattered about soccer. It was ordinary, but it was everything. The house, our home, stood steady behind them, its walls holding a decade of memories. As I watched them, I thought of Janet somewhere out there, facing her debts and regrets. I didn't hate her, but forgiveness was still far away. She'd chosen her path, and I'd chosen mine. The next day, Betty stopped by with her famous casserole. "You did it, Mildred," she said, squeezing my hand. "Those kids are lucky to have you." I smiled, though my heart still carried the ache of Janet's absence. I had raised her children, loved them as my own, yet the fracture in our family lingered like an old bruise. I looked out at the kids playing in the yard, their laughter spilling across the grass. They were my purpose, my reason to keep going. The house, the guardianship, the fight, it was all for them. That night, as I tucked Noah into bed, he looked up at me. "Will she come back?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. I brushed his hair gently. "If she does, we'll be ready. But we're together, and that's what matters." He nodded, sleep tugging at him. I stood in the doorway, watching all four of them sleep, their future safe in my hands. The fight was over, but the love, that would last forever. 3 months after the hearing, I stood in our Augusta backyard, watching the kids play beneath the late summer sun. Long shadows stretched across the lawn as laughter filled the air. Ryan tossed a frisbee to Noah, who darted across the grass, his growing